No matter how much praise or validation you get, it will never feel like it's enough. Most people are addicted to validation without even realizing it. And for a long time, I also lived for other people's approval. But after transforming my self-concept, I really don't need it at all anymore. Today, I want to share my journey with you and tell you how I did this. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Lorena. I'm a somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I help you to bridge the gap between who you currently are or perceive yourself to be and who you desire to be or become. Let's talk about the need for external validation and how to overcome it and get really grounded and embodied in your authentic self so that you can fill your own cup and don't need other people to do it for you. That's how you become so much more magnetic anyway. So many people build their self-worth through external validation. That can be through verbal validation, but it can also be through things that they receive. For example, you can feel validated by being in a romantic relationship with somebody. You can feel validated by having a big social media following. You can feel validated by reaching a certain level of success or achievement, whatever that looks like for you. And in the age of social media, it's especially prominent because there's so much comparison going on everywhere. And everybody's just showing their best side, right? So it's very easy for that to impact your self-worth. And it's also very easy to get stuck in a loop of wanting and craving that validation constantly. Because when you get validation in the form of praise or in the form of likes on Instagram or your crush texting you, you get an instant dopamine hit. Your brain is physically, chemically reacting to it. But continuing to chase that will not be sustainable. Humans live in a very individualistic society. Most of us just think about ourselves, to be completely honest. We don't think about the collective. We don't think about ourselves as part of one. We operate from our ego. How can I be the best? How can I be the most special? How can I win? Even if you don't want to admit it, there's a part of you that craves exactly that. And this runs especially rampant actually in the manifestation community. And I'm of the opinion that someone who doesn't crave validation or some sort of fulfillment for your ego isn't actually going to feel called to going on a manifestation journey, at least not as deep into the community as a lot of people are into it. And I don't exclude myself from it because I was in that community for a long time. And if I'm really honest with myself, way back, that was because I didn't feel fulfilled within myself. So I tried to fill the hole in my heart and in my soul through the validation of receiving things, manifesting things. It gave me a sense of achievement, a sense of success, a sense of being important. Because you can use manifestation as yet another tool for you to gain self-worth through external validation or achievement. But achieving things, getting praise, getting chosen, none of this will ever give you the validation or self-worth that you seek. Only you can give that to yourself. Needing it from the outside is often fake and it's not sustainable because you're constantly going to keep chasing it. And let me just say, it's totally okay to want validation. It's human and I still like validation. Validation is great. But there's a difference between wanting it, being open to receiving it, and needing it in order to feel worthy, in order to feel okay, in order to feel validated. You can overcome the need for external validation. You can become so rooted and embodied in who you are, and you can see yourself as the version of you that you desire to be without needing it from the outside, without relying on it from other people. You can become any version of yourself that you want to be. You can transform your self-concept so that you start perceiving yourself completely differently. Let's dive into my story of how I overcame the need for external validation and how I changed my self-concept ultimately. And then I'm going to give you some steps that you'll have to take in order to overcome the need for external validation. So we have to go right back to my childhood. When I was about 4 years old, I taught myself how to read. So before I even started school, I could read very fluently and all the adults around me were impressed. So before I entered school, I received lots and lots of praise, lots and lots of validation. I was praised as being special all the time, and that's what I became used to. Now, first of all, that is not sustainable. At some point, other people are going to catch up. I'm not always going to be the best if I'm the best at something now. And secondly, it was also not authentic to what I cared about and who I was. My soul always wanted connection and love, and the only way I received that at the time was through praise and validation. And so I associated praise and validation with being loved. But I never really received the love in the way I wanted to receive it. I wasn't popular in school. I was also bullied for a while. I wanted to be listened to and supported emotionally and not praised for my achievements. I felt a lot of pressure through that. And so I felt like I was in a constant chase and I felt pretty defeated. And that continued on until my mid-20s. And that's when I embarked on a spiritual journey. I found manifestation. I dove into Buddhist philosophies. I went on a whole journey. Now, the manifestation journey specifically, I saw some success there, but I was still overall in a trauma response. I was using manifestation to get things. The love, the validation, the praise, the success, the admiration. It was a backwards attempt to meet my core desire, and that was to be loved. And because relationships are our biggest mirror, that need for validation that I had showed up in relationships, in romantic relationships, first and foremost. And because I was in this cycle of chasing for so long, eventually I woke up to the fact that manifestations weren't going to solve this for me. It wasn't going to change the way I felt for the long term. So I embarked on a self-development journey. I really worked on healing my relationship patterns. I'd gotten therapy, I'd gotten coaching, I worked on my attachment style. I'd been very anxiously attached for most of my life and really prone to fantasizing about people who hadn't actually shown me that they were worth it. You know, the old falling in love with potential and not the actual person. And I got caught up in codependent dynamics. Now, I broke a lot of these patterns, so I thought I was good, but I wasn't. Because now, the same manipulative tendencies and need for external validation showed up in other areas. Sometimes it was my friendships. A lot of the time, it was work. My ego really jumped on that, especially when I started my business the first year or so. And it was actually really great to realize that that same pattern showed up in a different area now, although it was still the same pattern, because it showed me that I hadn't really broken it. It showed me that there had to be another way, and there was. Fast forward to today, I am really not in a place anymore where I need external validation at all. Now, I'm not saying I don't receive it. I'm not saying it's not nice to receive it. I'm not saying I don't have friends and people to reach out to when I need support. I have my mentors. We need support. That's different. But I'm not relying on anybody to validate me. I validate me. What other people say or do or think about me, or how much they misunderstand me or judge me, or even disrespect me, does absolutely nothing to my self-concept or my self-worth. It doesn't change my belief in myself, even when I get rejected or forgotten about. So there's no attachment to the highs anymore, and there's also no attachment to the lows. So what changed? I really transformed my self-concept at the core, not just in a specific area of life, not just through mindset technique. And there's a very specific process that I teach, which is very holistic. And I teach this in my signature coaching program, Recreate Yourself. So if you're interested, you can check out the landing page, which I have linked below. And if you're new here and you want to start with a free resource, then I also have my free self-concept mastery blueprint linked below. But this process is very in-depth. It's based on things that no mindset work, no amount of mindset work previously had been able to do. It's a deep process of rewiring your nervous system. And through that, also accessing your subconscious and getting to these core beliefs and core patterns and core emotions that we so often can't access. So through that, I was able to go into parts of my psyche that I was previously completely unconscious to. And this is an ongoing process. I still do this myself all the time because I am always evolving into further and further versions of myself. I've rewired, for example, an abandonment wound from when I was a newborn. Like, I don't remember that, obviously. It has to happen on a subconscious level. And it really changed my life. So I really got to transform my self-concept. I got to transform my identity by breaking the core pattern, and not just the surface level manifestation of it, not just how the pattern outpictured, which is what many people unknowingly do and what I did at first, right? They see a pattern and they try to fix the pattern rather than going to the core of the pattern so the pattern breaks on its own. When you get to the core pattern and you break that, you break all the patterns because you've changed your self-concept. That's when you don't have the experience of the same pattern showing up in a different area of your life anymore. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. It's a long-term process, but it's incredibly profound. So let's talk about some steps to overcome the need for external validation. And these are all just some of the elements we do in Recreate Yourself as well. But the most important part is that you really need to dismantle your current self-concept. We all have this identity that we hold on to. It's so deeply ingrained, and that needs to be brought into awareness. It needs to be dismantled. If you're feeling impacted by a lack of external validation, or you struggle to feel fulfilled or worthy without it, then that just means that is part of your self-concept. That is part of how you currently see yourself. That means your self-concept needs some work, because realistically, we all want to feel really good about who we are. We want to feel like the version of us that we want to be and not rely on others to give that to us. Because the reliance or attachment to that external validation actually makes you feel pretty powerless. So to change your self-concept, your current one needs to be dismantled. You also need a vision of where you want to go. There's a part in Recreate Yourself where we create an expansive vision of the future that you want for yourself. That can be edgy. And that is usually a pretty impactful process, as simple as it sounds, because you'll come up against your stuff. It's going to bring up shame, it's going to bring up impossibility, it's going to bring up feelings of protection. But this is important because that way you'll get to the core desires of what you really want, which the external validation is often just a representation of. Then we're needing to go into the subconscious. We're needing to make the unconscious conscious, essentially, which happens on a nervous system level, it happens on a somatic level. We often don't realize when we're attempting to manipulate reality. Or sometimes you may know that you are, but you maybe don't know where it's coming from or how to change it or heal it. So this step is not just about awareness. It's not just about understanding and knowing. It's not just about asking yourself, why do I believe this? What happened in my childhood? It's not just like that. It's really about integrating that and changing it. We will also need to address the fears, fully process the fears. Because the need for external validation always comes from the fear of something else. Need means that there's something else that you're trying to avoid. For example, maybe you want to be validated so that you don't feel less than, or so that you don't feel not good enough, or so that you don't feel judged or rejected. Those fears need to be found and faced and processed. They will need to lose their charge. And what's also necessary is to really embrace a new self-concept. And all of the above, all of what I just shared, is part of that embodiment process. But there will also be a step of intentional choice, intentional work around stepping into a new self-concept, into a new identity. This is the final step that we do in Recreate Yourself, which really creates a liberation from this need of external validation because of who you become. And when you're liberated from validation, you're also able to receive it fully. And it honestly comes to you more because you're not needing it anymore. Step into a self-concept that is unshakable so that you can create your own sense of value. Let me know if you ever find yourself chasing praise or a validation. And just think about how your life would change if you no longer needed it. In next week's video, we're going to debunk the idea of sitting with your emotions. I have a strong opinion on this. I hate it when people say that. So stay tuned for that, and I wish you a wonderful week.